What do prisons and monasteries both have in common? They both house extremely powerful people. So let me explain. So I was walking with my friend through Core Abbey, which is a monastery near where I live, the other day. And I go to these places time to time, and I did rely on Core Abbey specifically when I was extremely depressed. I would go to there's a back room around the back of the monastery where you can pray and light a candle, and it's just a really tranquil, nice place. So, and I took him there the other day, and we was talking about how you've got, if you take people in general, the amount of latent potential, the energy that just one person houses, and this could be a man or a woman. So you think of a woman, she has the ability to create life. So if a woman just had loads of children, she could basically build a small army. Do you know what I mean? Half of them are going to be women, half of them are going to be girls, half of them are going to be boys. You could sort of take over towns and cities with that kind of power. And for men, again, we have life creating abilities. Obviously it takes two people to make a baby, but you think of what men and women have achieved, what they've built. Just take Hitler, for example. This is a negative example, but just think of what Hitler, as one man, one man's ideas, was able to, I don't want to say achieve, but you know what I mean, what he was able to do. So the potential latent within each person is absolutely massive, right? Now, you can the majority of people just kind of coast on this potential and they don't really use it. But you take somebody that's in prison, that's incarcerated, they're there because that power was sort of too much for them to handle and they didn't follow the rules of society. And I don't know whether it was Jordan Peterson said this, but apparently prisons don't really reform people. They just keep you away from society long enough for your testosterone to drop. So I think they worked out the average age at which, I know your sentence determined on your the crime you commit, but I think over about 28 people are normally reformed because they don't have that energy. It's young people that are causing offences normally. So the potential is massive. So that's prisons. So you've got people that couldn't handle that potential in society, so they have to go into prison to make themselves not be a danger to other people, essentially. And then the other side of that is monasteries. It's kind of like the same thing, because a monk is a person who realizes they've got massive human potential and they're channeling that, like the criminal channels it into criminal activity, the monk channels it into spiritual activity. Still the same amount of power, still one human's worth of energy, but they're channeling it in a different way. So a monastery and a prison are both very powerful places. If you go into a prison, you can tell that kind of things could kick off any moment and there could be a lot of drama, so to speak. And in a monastery, it's the same energy, just channeled in the opposite direction. So why am I telling you this? I've found that although I'm not a monk, and I'm certainly not in prison, I can use monasteries kind of to my advantage. And I don't know if this is Machiavellian and it's not, you shouldn't do this, but I think monasteries welcome this. I will go to these places because they've been charged up. A monk is a person who is focusing all of his human potential into God, right? And this imprints on the location at which they're doing it, so the monastery. So I stayed in Samye Ling Monastery, which is a Tibetan Buddhist monastery that's in Scotland. I stayed there for a week learning how to meditate on a meditation retreat. And you can just feel it. It's like when you go into a library, that you know you're in a library, do you know what I mean? It's not just another room. It's not like if you walk into a supermarket, you don't put on any airs and graces to walk into a supermarket, but in a library you know where you are, sort of thing, and you feel it when you go into monasteries. So I will go there, and when I was depressed I would go to Core Abbey, And in the summer I would see a guy, there's like a grass right in front of the monastery, there's like a little bit of grass, and he was just doing Tai Chi, and I would see him there regularly just doing Tai Chi on the grass. And I think it's powerful to spend time in these places. You don't have to be a monk or believe in God, but it's kind of like, I don't know if you've heard of the rice experiment, but a Japanese guy, I can't remember his name, I'll put a picture of the book, did an experiment with 3 jars of rice. He cooked rice in water and put them into 3 separate jars. One jar he would go back to every day and love the rice. Now this is going to sound really out there, but you can replicate this experiment yourself if you don't trust it. He would like say to the rice, like you would a person you love, oh, I love you, you're a great piece of rice, yeah? The next one, he would say, I hate you, you're disgusting, I hope you die, and like abuse this rice. And then the third one he would leave alone. And he left it for, I think it was like a month. And after the month, the rice was noticeably different in each jar. The rice that he loved kind of fermented, and it didn't go mouldy, it fermented and had a sweet smell. The rice that he hated went a little bit mouldy, and the rice that he left alone just went completely mouldy. Now there's a few things to learn from that. Is one, I think it's the water contained in the rice that's getting imprinted. So water has a massive, it's like a supercomputer. Water is just pretty mad. That's why like when you freeze it, and he did experiments with freezing water, and the crystals, depending on what the water was exposed to, the crystals would form differently. So yeah, from the rice experiment you learn loving something is obviously good because that rice went fermented and it went nice. Hating something isn't as bad as ignoring it completely. And I think this is why people stay in abusive relationships, because you go more mouldy if you leave the rice alone than if somebody's actually abusing you. There's kind of, you've got to be kind of affectionate towards someone, or there's got to be some kind of connection there for you to actively abuse someone. You've really got to not be bothered to just leave them alone. So anyway, that rice experiment you'll probably think is a load of bollocks, but you can replicate it and try it yourself. But what I learned from that was intentions, especially around water, like I'm around a body of water now, intentions imprint themselves on water and people. So a human being is like 80% water. That's why if you love somebody, it has an effect on them, and if you abuse them and ignore them, the same as the rice. So I go to these places, monasteries in particular, because like I don't know how long Core Abbey's been there, but say some churches have been around for hundreds of years. So for hundreds of years, people, which are bodies of water, have been essentially blessing these locations with their intention and with love and with a clear mind. And you can, even if I just go there and sit and meditate or read or do some stretching, Core Abbey has like a pen where there's pigs. Even if I just go and look at the pigs, I feel like I'm soaking up that good energy. And I think the opposite would be true for a prison. There's a lot of hate and pain and suffering and human energy. Same amount of energy, but it's just channeled in the opposite direction. So I believe spirituality is just a spectrum from light to dark. You've got pure light, which is enlightenment, and pure darkness, which is just evil and death, I guess. I don't even think death's evil because it's a normal part of life, but that's just the other end of the spectrum. I guess taking somebody else's life would be pure evil. So a prison, you don't want to end up in prison because you're going to be exposed to all of that negative intention. So yeah, that was a weird ramble, but me and my mate was just sort of talking about it. When I went to the monastery in Scotland, there's a pond like on the grounds, and the monks would walk clockwise around this pond, and the path was really narrow, and I was like walking around it thinking, the monks, and they do that like a couple of times a day I think, or 3 times a day, I'm thinking these people have been walking this in a meditative state with a clear mind, and I'm soaking this up, and it was around a pond, so it's a body of water with a big statue of like Buddha in the middle. I'm just thinking I'm getting some sort of charge from this, Now I don't know if that's selfish because I'm not a monk and I shouldn't be like using their intention like that, but I think that's why they do it, I know Buddhists do, it's to help all sentient beings on their path to enlightenment, and I feel like I get a little bit closer when I'm in these places. So my actionable step is, you don't need to be religious, but go to a monastery or a church or even a library or even gardens and nature. Like, that's why I'm by this water here. Nature's the same. You spend time in a forest, it does the same thing, I'm sure it does, because the trees contain water, and it's all information contained within water. I think that's why cold water exposure and sea swimming is so good for people's mental health, because you can discharge negativity that you've built up in your mind, and it's through water. So actionable step, go and chill in a monastery.